Welcome back to the Sportsnaut interview. Scott Branson here, and I'm joined by Matt Miller. He's the ESPN NFL draft analyst and insider. You can follow him on x.com at NFL Draft Scout. Matt, let's jump in. I want to start with a story because it's been sort of the talk of college football. Of course, we saw the University of Colorado go in and play an Oregon team that just really dismantled them. But Shedeur Sanders at quarterback has been a talk of the college football world for a little bit. Deion Sanders says he doesn't want his son going in the draft. What did we see in that loss against Oregon with Shedeur Sanders that people can take away from when they're looking at him as a prospect for the next level?
Yeah, I mean, he's been incredibly impressive, through 3 games, even the loss to Oregon. I think you have to be impressed. The poise is really what stands out to me. I mean, watching him week 1, even against TCU, I think what stood out was the ball placement. I mean, the dude was surgical, just carving up a TCU defense. Josh Newton, their corner, by the way, has a chance to be a first-round pick. So, yes, TCU lost a lot, but they still have talent on defense. Colorado State, same thing, surgical, poised in the pocket. And I think that's one thing that, even folks who watched him at Jackson State didn't get that idea of like, okay, they had a lot of 4 and 5 stars at Jackson State playing against some teams that didn't have that level of talent. Now you're stepping up. Every team you're playing has a similar talent level, and he's still excelling. So I think the accuracy from within the pocket is really impressive. Now, against Oregon, you saw something that has been what I would call a coachable area for Shedeur Sanders. He's got to get rid of the ball faster, and he's getting hit more than any quarterback in college football. He is not the biggest guy. I think he's listed at like 6'2", 215. He's a lean body frame. This is not Josh Allen out there running around at 245 pounds. So he's just got to get through some of those reads a little bit faster and make some of those plays more on time. Their offense right now is predicated on getting those receivers, Jimmy Horn Jr., Xavier Weaver, Travis Hunter. They're getting them in space, but because of that, you're still got to get the ball out faster, I think.
Now, we heard Deion say he doesn't want his son to leave school after this year to go to the NFL. The NIL, I mean, you're talking, this kid, I know it's an outlier because of who he is, and there's some kids up in this stratus, but he's going to make almost $4 million this year in college.
Yeah.
How much does that play in the factor now for kids? I know it's not NFL money, but for a kid like Shedeur Sanders coming from the family he's coming from, having his dad he has, how much is that? Are we going to see this maybe play into kids sometimes staying a little bit longer if the money's that large?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of important nuggets to what you said. Coming from Deion Sanders is one of the greatest football players of all time. He's also one of the most marketed football players of all time. The Sanders family's doing okay in terms of money. There's not going to be the rush. Like if I had been in that situation, I would have needed to go to the NFL because that's generational money. Bryce Young got like $35 million. If my mom and dad, when I was 20, 21 years old, if I'd say, guys, I could go make $35 million, they'd be like, yeah, okay. When, could we go with you? Right. Because that would have changed my family's life at that time. So I think with Shedeur, obviously there's not the financial, kind of incentive to do that. I also think, like you said, because of NIL, it's not just Shedeur Sanders who's going to have to make this tougher decision. It's Caleb Williams, whose father has already talked to ESPN's Pete Thamel and said, maybe there's not a rush to jump that there would have been in the past. And we haven't seen that yet explicitly. I think we could look at Jared Verse at Florida State, Olu Fashanu at Penn State, likely would have been top 15 picks last year, decided to go back to college, and they're not quarterbacks. So I do think we could see a situation where Caleb Williams, if he enters the draft, will be the number 1 overall pick. So do people like Drake May at North Carolina? Do people like Quinn Ewers at Texas, who's already made a ton of NIL money? Do people like Shedeur Sanders have this conversation of, hey, what if I can make $5 million in college for another year and improve my draft stock? Or I can get into a draft that doesn't have Caleb Williams, and maybe I can get that Bryce Young money of $35 million. So there's a lot of components that are going to go into that conversation now. I mean, I think it's great that these college athletes are able to make some money where they're not forced into a purely financial decision when it comes to their professional careers. That's a good thing, in my opinion.